Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interviewed titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today is a veteran and believes we should all lead by example. He's the CEO and founder of Patriotic Insurance Group, founded in 2014. Please welcome Rob Bowen.
Thank you for having me today, Michael. It's good. It's very nice to meet you in person.
It is. Yeah, we were just talking about that, how nice it is now that we're kind of getting to see people's faces and take our masks off and be able to see some smiles underneath the masks. It's kind of nice, right?
And stop doing Zoom meetings.
And stop I don't know if those are going to go away.
No, I think those have become a permanent part of business.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to use them now effectively.
They certainly have changed the way that we operate and function in the business world.
Yep.
I think that it's going to be for the better because we're able to be a little bit more flexible with people traveling, of being in different states or different towns or whatever, and being able to have a meeting spur of the moment via Zoom, and everybody knows how to respond to it, which is kind of nice. What I'd like to dig into a little bit is your upbringing or whatever impacted you in your past that brought you to the moment in 2014 that you said, I'm going to open my doors and start a business in the insurance world. So I'm really interested because I myself am an insurance broker as well. Yep. And so I know that my story is not unique in the sense that I did not grow up saying, I want to be an insurance agent and I want to own an insurance agency.
I think most, if anyone says that, they're probably lying.
Right.
And I think most people that do end up that way, it's from a family business.
Okay.
I mean, most people, as I've listened to podcasts and met other agency owners, we all kind of fell into it somehow.
Right.
And I think the stories of how people fall into it is very interesting because you're right. You don't grow up as a young person going, I want to be an insurance agent. You want to be a firefighter or a police officer or a rocket scientist or whatever you are, an astronaut.
Something fun.
Something that we see on TV and go, okay, I want to do that. Insurance, you're not watching a commercial going, that's what I want to do.
Right.
But no, my background, I grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, graduated from Lafayette in 1986, Lafayette College. I'll be honest here, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I'd spent a summer putting a suit on, worked at National Westminster Bank for an internship. And when I graduated, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to put a suit on. And back in the day, this was early 80s, mid 80s, where, that's what you wore, the dark suit, white shirt, red tie. And I was like, that's not for me right now. And so I kind of tried to figure out what I wanted to be when I grow up. And most of my family's Navy. So I said, let me talk to the Navy. Let's see what they have to offer me. And went to talk to a recruiter, and fortunately, back then there was no internet. There was, none of that existed, so I couldn't really do a lot of research on my own, and ended up going through what's called a aviation officer candidate school, which no longer exists. It got shut down in 1991, and that program was started in World War II for anyone that wanted to fly in the Navy. I didn't fly. I was a back ender. I have glasses on, but that was Marine Corps boot camp for 14 weeks. Wow. That changes your life. It was very eye-opening. It was probably the best learning experience, I would say, of my life, because you found your strengths, you found your weaknesses. You had a group of guys. You had a couple women who were starting to get integrated into that. And it really kind of opened your eyes to why, a couple of years down the road, it opened your eyes to why you went through it. Because when you're going through boot camp, and it doesn't matter what boot camp you're going through, you're kind of like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing push-ups until I pass out? Why am I being kept up late at night? Why am I being run around in circles? What is the goal of this? And when I got to the fleet and got to the actual Navy, you realized it then. Because you got to trust these guys and girls. You got to trust them with your lives. And everyone came through, there's different ways to get to the Navy, to the fleet. But it, we all went through something to get there. You don't just walk off the street and say, hey, I want to join the Navy. It's not how it works. So I did that, and then I had an 8-year commitment. So I spent 3 years in San Diego, out at sea most of the time, was part of Desert Shield. So we were the carrier that got the pull into the Gulf when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. and got home right before the war started, and then spent 3 years in Dahlgren, Virginia, working on what's called a black project. And got my master's. I was rarely home, so I decided at that point with 2 kids to get out. That was my time to get out.
So during all of this, you had time to get married and have kids?
Yeah, we got married. Yep. Actually just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary in
congratulations.
May. Thank you. So, we had 2 kids at that point. I was going to work full time and getting my master's at night at George Washington. So I got my master's, got out of the military, and basically went down to Wall Street for 13 years. And that was very eye-opening. That was, one of the things I work with veterans on, and I'm sure we'll get to it at some point, but it's, that transition from military life to civilian life is very difficult in a good situation. Because it's hard to translate what you did. It's hard to, people don't understand the skill sets of the military and what veterans have to offer. And so it's a tough transition. And one of my frustrations coming out of the military was my impression of the corporate world is no one wanted to make a decision. And my view of the world is if you don't make a decision, you've made a decision. So I'm a believer in go with what you got, make a decision, let's go down this path and see what happens. Right. And at the end of the day, no one's going to die. It's not the military. You make a bad decision in the military, things can go south quick. But in the civilian world, let's make a decision, let's go. And that's a continuing frustration. And it was a long time ago that, just make a decision. It's not about, protecting yourself or the ultimate CYA. Just make a decision and go for it. And the companies I thrived in were the ones that let me do that and make mistakes, and not be punished for making a bad decision. It's like, we made a bad decision. Okay, great. Turn it around. Let's try something different. But that, the military really taught me, and I was taught by 2 senior chiefs, how to lead by example.
Yeah.
And I was okay at it. I'm still probably average to maybe a little above average with that. So I learn every day, but that's what I got out. And that's really kind of, when you go through boot camp and then you go through the military and you don't really think about it being scary what you're doing. You just do it.
I'd like to hear more about the boot camp experience. I think what you said there about you're not going to die, it's a very stark contrast, right, of the military life and then, like you said, civilian life. Of that, we in the civilian life, and I'm the son of a veteran. I'm nowhere near being in the military. My father was adamantly against me joining at any stage in my life, and I'm quite happy to be a civilian. But I certainly understand that the decisions that we make as civilians, as just regular daily lives, is it's not going to kill us, but sometimes we feel that way. And so for you, you have actually, as a veteran, have actually seen the difference between being in a military, in a battlefield, right, and seeing what a decision can lead to, versus being in the civilian world, as we call it, right, and being like, if you don't make a decision or you make a decision, no one's going to die, right? I mean, and we're talking about, of course, business decisions here that we're talking about. So I think that's very interesting because I think it relates a lot to our entrepreneurs and people out there trying to climb the corporate ladder, of making a decision to start their business, or making a decision to speak to their boss or manager about getting a promotion, making that decision that it's not going to kill you to start it, and it's not going to kill you if you fail at it or if you get turned down for the promotion, but at least making the decision to go for it. And I think that there's such a great relationship there. I'm very interested in the boot camp because you mentioned something about how not knowing in the moment what you were doing, why you were doing so many push-ups, and then learning later on that it built trust. And I think, again, that relates to our business world, of some of the things that we do in the business world of, why am I, staying up till 2 a.m. researching this company, or that I'm not even going to sell, let's say, right? Or that I don't even have a chance, an opportunity to get in front of. Why am I doing that? And then learning later on that, hey, during that research, it actually led to something somewhere else, or meeting somebody that you didn't have an opportunity with as a prospect. They introduced you to somebody who, I think all of that leads to something. So I'm interested in the boot camp time of your life, of what was going through your mind in that moment, and what did get you through it? Because, looking back, it was easy to say, hey, this prepared me. But in that moment, and it's the same thing with the entrepreneur and the business leader out there, in this moment that they're in, of making these decisions, of going through the hard times, how do we come out of that? How do we look towards the future for the brighter days?
There's a big connection. A lot of the companies I work with, some people that are franchise consultants, and they love veterans. And I always like to caveat with, veterans are also a cross section of the United States, right? So not every veteran has the skill set that I'm going to talk about, but in general, they're willing to take the risk. They're willing to go down the path. They're willing to work hard. They're willing to spend those late hours of why am I doing this? You understand the greater good. You kind of can see the goal of where you're trying to get to. You're not afraid to fail. I think a lot of people think the military, we're all a bunch of robots. And I've had people say that, and I actually get on my soapbox and I jump at that. I probably shouldn't, but I do. Because what I learned in the military was how to be adaptable. We had manuals, we had checklists. I mean, you're in a plane. I had a 600-page document that told me about my plane. This is what the plane does. But that document is written in blood from people making mistakes. But you had to adapt. You had to know enough about what that document said. So, because not every scenario was covered, right? Something would happen. Okay, well, now what do I do? And you have the real world, right? You're in the Persian Gulf. And I was in the Persian Gulf in the early 90s. There was no other U.S. military forces there. No country liked us. Look at the countries that are there, right? Mm-hmm. And there was no place for us to pull into. So we were there as, you can call us whatever, but, and things happened every day. And you're doing the stuff you're doing and not even in combat with bullets flying. I was never in combat with bullets flying. Mm-hmm. I was in a combat zone, but I was on the largest warship in the world. I was on an aircraft carrier surrounded by 6 other naval vessels. I felt very safe. I never felt like my life was in danger. But just doing the day-to-day operations, you're flying off an aircraft carrier. It's the most dangerous place in the world, other than combat. There's young kids launching your plane. There's 19-year-old kids on the flight deck, pushing buttons and sending you off the front end. And you start to realize that, the military taught me to just adapt, make quick decisions. We had in the military, in the Navy, what was called control by negation. And what that meant is, being in aviation, we could be 500 miles away from the carrier, and we had to make decisions. We couldn't ask permission. The expression, it's easier to beg for forgiveness and ask for permission, came from that mindset. Now, that's taken it to a new level.
Right.
But, we couldn't call back and say, okay, well, Admiral, we see this, and this. What should we do? We had to make snap decisions and then get back to the ship, and then we would usually have a debrief about what we saw, what we did, why did we do it, and then figure out if there was a better way to do it. So we're 25, 26, 27-year-old, I call us kids at that point, making these decisions. And so it taught you to make a quick decision, evaluate it, and be able to change it if you needed to. Because the fluidity of the areas we operated in changed minute by minute. Mm-hmm. Things happened. We got intel. We were on a radio, so we heard something. Something happened in front of us, and you had to coordinate with other people. You weren't by yourself. Mm-hmm. So I always like to say that military, we're not just like program robots. Yes, we were well trained. I went through 2 years of flight school, but you were trained at the base level, but then you were trained to make decisions. That control by negation of, okay, you're the mission commander. Mm-hmm. This just happened. How are you going to respond? And you can't. It's not let's have a meeting. That I joke about that with the civilian. Let's have a meeting and discuss this for ad nauseum. No, let's just go.
Right.
Let's go down this path. If we mess it up, we'll turn and we'll do something different. And, I saw very good leaders and I saw really crummy leaders, and I think that's important. You need that dichotomy to say, okay, I like what he did. I didn't like what he did.
Right.
That was not a good, it doesn't mean they're a bad leader. They're just not as good as the one I saw. And I had a mentor, my old skipper, and he was my mentor. I saw the way he led. He led by example. He would let us make mistakes, not big mistakes. There's certain things you just don't do because you're dealing. My aircraft was $100 million a copy. You don't want to put that thing in the water. Right. There's a lot of paperwork. We used to joke about put that thing in the water, or if something happened. If I made a mistake in the plane, I made a bad decision and someone died. That's not what you want to happen.
Right.
You want to make sure that you're doing the right thing at all times. Mm-hmm. But that's what I got out of the military. Yeah. And, it's interesting now because sometimes I think the pendulum swings too much where I'm just like, let's just go.
Right.
And I need to take a step back and go, back to the entrepreneur and the business person. A lot of, I think entrepreneurs are leery to take that jump where I'm just going to jump. Now, neither one's right or wrong. It's just sometimes I need to be pulled myself back and say, okay, you're forging ahead and you're not looking at all the facts. You need to take a step back and go, is this the best thing for my business?
Right.
Is this the best thing for me? Is this the best thing for my team? And that's, I just kind of expect people to follow me. And that's not the way it works all the time. You've got to convince people. You've got to educate them. You've got to train them. You've got to get them on the same page. All the stuff they talk about for business leaders. And as an entrepreneur, one advantage I guess I might have had was I wasn't afraid to make decisions. But one of the disadvantages is maybe I need to take that step back every once in a while and go, okay, let's reevaluate. Let's not keep forging ahead, because maybe I can be very stubborn. I can get blinders on and just, okay, and it's my way or the highway.
Right.
And that can lead to problems too from the business side.
I think like what you said there too about the training that the military offers, and when we think about just in the business world or civilian world, as we're calling it on this episode, just to make the distinction, is information is very important to have, and the more information you have, the easier it becomes to make a decision.
Yes.
And from what you're talking about with the military is that there's so much training involved, and like you said, the boot camp, going back to the boot camp days, like you wonder in those moments, why am I doing this? But that training is what leads to you being able to make a decision so quickly and on the fly. Yeah. And the same comes into the business world of the training that you do of learning about a product or learning about your industry or learning about a different company or learning different skills in the business world are what lead you to be able to make better decisions and much quicker decisions later on in life. So I would associate the two of the boot camp, and you could find that in the business world. There's plenty of business trainings and different types of boot camps. I mean, I wouldn't call Toastmasters a boot camp, but I would definitely say there's a lot of training there that can put you take you out of your comfort zone and force you to do something that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a military boot camp.
Right.
You don't have to hang out with Marine Corps drill instructors. That's an eye-opening experience unto itself. But you've got to be able to take that risk. Like you said, get out of your comfort zone. I mean, and as a business owner and certainly as an entrepreneur, if you stay in your comfort zone, you're not going to grow.
Right.
Right. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you want to grow we call it in the insurance world, the lifestyle agency, you just want to go to work 2 days a week. You want to have 3 people working. God bless you. That's awesome. No one's here to judge what anyone wants to do. But in most businesses, you can't do that. I mean, insurance has we have two major uniquenesses, the way I look at it. Number one, we don't have an accounts receivable problem. You don't pay me, your insurance cancels, there's nothing we can do about it. And we have this thing called recurring revenue, right? If you do everything right, the thing just renews. Most businesses don't have that. I mean, businesses have subscription and all that. But
they have to create it themselves.
Yeah.
This is non-created.
Yeah,
this is there.
I mean, we found out in COVID, we have a pandemic-proof industry. Now, we didn't cover anything, thank God, or we probably would have all gone bankrupt. But, those people still needed car insurance. They still needed to insure their homes. They still needed to insure their businesses. They had to keep paying those premiums. I was fortunate. I only really lost one business to COVID. Everyone else survived. So those premiums just kept flowing. And
as a side note, just for our listeners and listening to about insurance talk right now, for our little insurance segment here, is there is a reason, because some people didn't understand why COVID was not covered on their policies, and it's an exclusion. But you could have added it to your policy for an extra premium, and it was removed back when H1N1 hit the scene in the early 2000s, I think like 2006 or 2007. So that exclusion happened after H1N1. And I might be wrong about H1N1, but I think that was the.
I think it was that which was SARS, correct?
Right, I think so. Yeah, and that's where the insurance carriers saw that this is something that's going to bankrupt us if we have on every policy, and so it became an exclusion. But yes, if you. Before the pandemic had the foresight for thinking that a pandemic could happen, you could have added something like this to your policy. There were. Supplement insurances that could cover it. Just as a side note, as a little asterisk to this conversation.
No, it's an important one, because like I was reading an article. I don't know this firsthand, but Wimbledon had a pandemic policy. Okay, they paid $2 million a year for 17 years. So they paid $34 million. Now I'm sure the person on the board of Wimbledon got beaten up every year, right?
Every year.
Why are we paying? They got $141 million back.
Because of this.
That's what insurance is. It's a contract.
Right.
But most of it was was excluded. Thank God, I think, because if the insurance industry had not excluded it just from the business income, which is really what hit people, hit the restaurants and the retail, there wouldn't have been enough money.
Right.
So.
It would have been a terrible thing. I want back to our entrepreneurs and business leaders. So that was your little insurance segment there for everyone. I mean, you got two insurance brokers in the room. We got to be able to talk a little shop with each other. I want to go back to Skipper Joller, excuse me. That's the skipper who you mentioned earlier. That was your mentor. And you mentioned something that I hear most business leaders and entrepreneurs talk about making mistakes and allowing room for mistakes. And so many speak about it, and we talk about it, and you mentioned it too in your bio to me of failing forward. And we talk about this, and we've talked about it on my podcast previously. I'm interested in knowing if you have any insight on this, on the thought process that allows us to be able to allow others to make mistakes. So you as a leader now, or Officer Joller, or I don't know his rank, Skipper Joller. What do you think, what's going through their mind? What qualities, what tips, what recommendations you have for a leader to be able to go through that process of saying, okay, I'm going to allow this person to do what they're going to do, and they're probably going to make a mistake. How do you let go of that control, I guess, as a leader?
It's hard.
And what did he teach you maybe in letting go?
It's very hard to do, and I'm not perfect at it. But I think what's important is you allow people to make the mistakes. You hold them accountable. You have to hold them accountable. But there's a difference between holding someone accountable and punishing someone. And that's the difference. And I saw it in the military versus the civilian world, where the civilian world is very punitive. You made a mistake. You were trying to push the envelope a little bit, trying to figure out another way to do it. And if you made a mistake by doing that, then you get there's a penalty behind it. Where in the military, as long as you were within certain guidelines, within what our little book told us we could do with our plane, they would, because you're trying to become better. You're trying to become a better person. You're trying to, push the envelope. I guess is the stereotypical expression that's used, and that was okay, because at the end of the day, people learn from that. And if there was a mistake made, then we always had what was called after action reports. What Skipper Joller did very, very well is he was always human. Okay, he was always human with all of us. So he's an 05, I'm an 02. So he's the commanding officer of our squadron. We used to call us a bunch of junior officers. It's like the VPs at banks, right? There's a lot of us. Right. But there's also, I had 35 guys working for me. They were enlisted, and I outranked them, but I had no experience. None. I had 14 weeks hanging out with Marine Corps drill instructors and 2 years of flight school. I'd never been in the real Navy. So I had senior chiefs that had 25 years experience. I technically outranked them because I was an officer, they were not. That dichotomy and how to learn how to be a leader in that environment. That to be a leader in that environment is not I outrank you and I'm grabbing my collar, because that's what a lot of people would do.
Right.
Like, look, I have a rank.
Right.
That's not how it works. We had a policy called the closed door policy. And I think it's a Navy tradition. We had it in our squadron. All it meant was one of the, let's say there's a junior enlisted person who's, 20 years old, been in for 2 years. He has a problem. And he can walk into my office, shut the door. And when that door shuts, the rank comes off. And he can tell me anything he needs to tell me. Because sometimes you need to get something done.
Right.
He shouldn't have to report to his petty officer reports to this, people think the military is this very rigid structure. Yes. And it is.
Sure.
On purpose, but there's ways to get things done. And I could have a 19-year-old kid walk in my office and he's terrified because I'm an officer, and he shuts the door and now the rank comes off. What's going on? And he would tell me a problem and I would go, okay, we'll take care of that. And I would figure out the right way to do it, whether it's me, whether it's my senior chief, whether it's whoever it is, and that problem gets solved like that. And it also allowed people to make mistakes and not be punished for them.
Right.
I say in my office all the time, if you make a mistake, especially, I'm not going to digress to insurance, but if you make a mistake in the insurance world, you can fix it that day. If you hide it, it's a problem.
Right.
And that's any business, right? If you make a mistake, raise your hand, tell me you made a mistake, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out why you did it, why we don't want to do it again. But that's important. And I think in the entrepreneurial world, as you're growing a business, you're hiring people, you've got to foster that environment because let's be honest, you start as an entrepreneur and one day say, I'm going to open this business. You have no idea what you're doing. No idea, right? First day of insurance. I had no idea what I was doing. And, kind of fake it till you make it, right? You got to make mistakes. And if you don't allow your team to make mistakes, all they're going to do is hide it. That's human nature. So I've had people in my office that hit them. They're gone. No, I don't care whatever you do, as long as you had good intentions and you went at it with a good heart, we can fix it.
Right.
And I'm not going to fire you. I'm not going to reprimand you. We're just going to learn and we're going to move forward.
I think that's a really important part, what you just said there, of having good intentions and a good heart. It's funny. I feel like I have that conversation sometimes with my 6-year-old daughter, Denise, of the mistakes. Like you said, the little kids, you can't blame them. They're afraid of the repercustions, just like us as adults, we're afraid of the repercussions. But them more so because it's the end of the world for them. If you take away their Barbies or something.
Yep. God forbid you take away their phone as they get older.
Yeah. So I'm fortunate in the sense that they are honest. But I mean, you can't help it, and they do try to hide things, right? Yep. And I do have that conversation with her, like, hey, look, you're just playing, you're trying to be a kid, you're trying to have fun, and as long as you're just doing right and something breaks or something falls or you say the wrong thing, we can fix that. We can fix that. Just tell me the truth and we can fix it. When you don't tell me the truth, when you don't tell me what happened, now I have a bigger problem, because it's not the problem of this broke, it's more of the problem of what's broken inside, right? Like how do we fix that? And as an employer, having an employee who's not telling the truth or something, that's a bigger problem, because how do you fix that? You almost can't. That's a character issue. Hey. And so we have to fix that. Another thing that I noticed in what you were just talking about there is there has to be enormous trust with that closed door policy. And I think back of when you were talking about boot camp again is building that trust between each other, like you were saying earlier on, is that there has to be enormous trust. And if you don't have that trust, it's hard to close that door, or it's hard for that 18-year-old to walk through that door. Right? How do you foster that trust? I mean, I know you talked a little bit about it in the boot camp, but whether we talk about your military background or we talk about today at the Patriotic Insurance Agency, how do you foster that trust with your employees and them?
It's a great question, because this kind of stuff, it's easy to talk the game.
Right.
Right. But what you have to do, what I found works well, is, you do have to say it. But then you have to practice it yourself. You have to admit your own mistakes. So I'm very open when I make a mistake. My team knows when I probably mess up more than they do. Let's be honest here. And when I do, I bring it up to them. Hey, I just did this. I did it for this reason. And this is a mistake I made. And here's how we're not going to do this again. Just so they can learn from that. If they see that I'm vulnerable and I'm willing to open myself up, it works. If you're sitting in that stereotypical, ivory white tower, and I've worked for large corporations that drove me nuts because of that. The talk's cheap, and giving the hurrah speech and, hey, I want you to come to me, and I want you to, if you make a mistake, come to me. If there's no trust there, and some of it's the belly barometer, right? Some of it's just kind of how you view the person. But you have to lead by example. You've got to make your own mistakes, and you've got to foster that culture that allows that. And, I'm glad you picked up on the intention side, because to me, that's important. If you had good intentions, if you're trying to help the client or help us or whatever you were doing, then there's nothing wrong with that mistake. If your intentions were wrong, then I have a problem.
Right.
And a lot of this too, and I joke in my office all the time, a lot of what we do in the business world, entrepreneurial, is parenting. You immediately went to your 6-year-old. That's what this is. Yeah. My kids are older, so I've gone through the parenting thing. We're still parenting as they get older, but it's a different kind of parenting. I have a 21-year-old. You have a 6-year-old. It's two different worlds here. Right? Two completely different conversations. But that parenting is also about being an entrepreneur, because I think a lot of people don't understand you are nothing without your employees. I hate the word employees. I hate the word boss. We're a team. Yes, my name's on the door, so I got to make the decisions at points, but I want to empower my people to make their own decisions. Make a decision, and if it's wrong and it's going to blow up, just come to me.
Right.
And I'll back you. I will take a bullet. I mean, I see it in the business world where customers will try to play us off, like as parents, right? Your daughter will ask you, dad says no, go to mom.
Yep.
Right? We all did that. We all did as parents. Same thing in a business. I've had clients come to me and say, "Oh, well, your team member said this to me," and I said, "That's impossible." Like, how do you know? Because I trained him. Oh, I'm sure he said it. No, he didn't. And they're expecting me to throw my team under the bus because that's what I guess a typical boss that they know would do.
Right.
And I told them all the time, I will take the bullet. And even if you were wrong, even if maybe your intentions were a little off. I mean, I've had my team members now for 2 and 4 years. I've had them for a while, and we've worked together, so I know them very well. I'll still take the bullet, and then we'll figure out what we need to do. And I will call back to a client and call them out on it. I don't care. I mean, that's not how you treat people. Just because someone is a team member or an employee doesn't mean you can talk to them that way. You still got to be a human being.
Right.
And usually when I push back at clients, they will apologize. I called a client back and said, "You're going to call her back right now and apologize, or you can leave my office."
Right.
And they're like, "You're right. I was a jerk." And people have bad days, right? We've all had bad days. I can be a jerk in a heartbeat. Trust me. But once you get to that point, then you need to take that step back and go, okay. And again, most people in the world have good intentions. They want to do the right thing. They had a bad day, something happened in their lives, and so you never know. And I've even said it on phone calls. I have a client just screaming at me. I'm like, "Dude, what's going on? You can't be this upset about insurance. There's just no way."
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, well, I just found out my mom had cancer." Okay, I'm sorry. What can I do to help you?
Right.
What can I do to help your mom? It doesn't matter at this point. This is all about your mom. That's more important than anything you and I are going to ever discuss. And if you get that, again, it's being human with people, having that conversation. Don't make it a transaction. I talk about it all the time in my office. It's not easy to do, but don't make it a transaction. Do we do transactions? Of course we do. But make it a relationship. Get to know these people. That's fun.
Right.
And it's not about, getting referrals and cross-selling and all the stuff they want us all to do. You get to know these people. There's some really interesting people out there. I have an opportunity to talk to interesting people all day long.
Right.
It's not always awesome conversations. I mean, some of them go south quick.
Right.
But that, there's, in the business world, you're always selling, right? But you don't want to be selling. You want to be building relationships. You want to be, there's all the stereotypical books and all the expressions that are out there, but it's true. You got to build relationships. It's not about the sale, because if you can build that relationship, the sale, I assume the sale. If I have a good conversation, I'll have people call, "I need insurance for whatever." We don't talk about that for like 45 minutes. We'll talk about whatever, their kids, my kids, if they're a veteran, we have that connection. It's how do you get that connection with someone?
Right.
And at the end of the day, I've had people say, "God, I really wanted to come with you, but you were so honest. You just said, go with that one because it's fine." That builds trust. You got to play. I think entrepreneurs and business owners, and some of it's forced by, especially in the insurance world or the franchise world, forced by day-to-day numbers. You got to play that long game. You're building a business. Now, will I ever be the size of Walmart? God, no. But Sam Walmart started with, I don't know the backstory, but probably one store.
He did. Yeah, it was
he started one store.
It's actually a pretty nice story.
Is it? Yeah, I don't know, but everyone
it'll give you a little warmth in your heart about Walmart.
Yeah, but that's everyone started like that way. There's the famous picture of Jeff Bezos at a desk. And that was Amazon. Was one computer, and that was an old computer.
Yeah.
I remember those computers. I'm old enough to know what those computers did or didn't do. But he played the long game.
Right.
You're building a business. You don't want to, and I've heard other people, I should give credit to other people because these are not my ideas. These are things I've learned. You don't want to, as an entrepreneur, you don't want to create a job for yourself. And I think that happens a lot. I've been in that position in my agency. I'm trying to get out of it. I don't want to create a job. I want to create a business. And it's hard to do. It's the old E-Myth book, which I think is one of the best books out there that everyone needs to read if you want to be an entrepreneur.
What is that book?
It's called E-Myth.
E-Myth?
Myth. And I'm drawing a complete blank on the author.
We'll look it up.
Yeah, it's famous. The book's around for like 30, 40 years. And it talks about working in your business versus on your business. And that's the difference. If you're in it, and you have to be in the beginning, right? You're the head chef and chief bottle washer at this point, right? But as you grow, you got to pull yourself out of it. And that's where that long-term planning. You're not doing quarterly earnings like these big companies are doing.
Right.
You're building a business. You're building an asset, a foundation to whether you're going to sell it, whether you're going to give it to your kid, whatever you're going to do. But, it's hard to do. And I think a lot of people, that's where a lot of people stumble, is they basically create a job for themselves. And most entrepreneurs that I've met don't want to have a job.
Right.
Because you can go to corporate America. You can get the salary, you can get the benefits, you can get, all the stuff all the benefits that come with those jobs, those corporate jobs. Or the military, same way. I mean, the military, you're getting paid and you get vacation, you get all that stuff. But you're willing to give all that up, but yet you end up creating the same job you just left.
For yourself, right?
Yeah.
I love how you broke down leading by example. I think that part of your answer in about building trust was also breaking down the definition of leading by example. Because again, that's another kind of catchphrase of like, how do you lead? I lead by example. Okay, what does that mean? Well,
yeah, you're 100% correct, because it sounds good, but it's one of those like,
and it
how
does.
Do you do this?
But like you said, leading by example doesn't just mean like, hey, I'm going to be honest, so you be honest. Yep. It means doing some of the things, some of the hard work that you just mentioned there of calling a client back and saying, hey, you were disrespectful to my employee, please apologize, and be willing to let them go. Something else that I made a note of while you were talking about was being vulnerable. Is that by you as a leader showing your vulnerability, showing that you've made mistakes, showing that you will continue to make mistakes, and being open about it with your team allows them to say, you know what, if Rob's okay making a mistake and he's not beating himself up and he's letting himself come back to work tomorrow, he might let me come back. And so it builds that trust. And I think vulnerability is something that is being talked about more these days. There's a great TED Talk about vulnerability, and I forget her name. It's on the top of my tongue, and I'll probably spew it out later. It'll come out, but there's a great TED Talk. If you put TED Talk vulnerability, a really great one about vulnerability and how important it is to be vulnerable, and how important it is to our families, our team members, and as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, to be vulnerable, because like you said, it does create that trust, and it gets us somewhere really, really great. I'd like to dig into a little bit further about working in versus working on your business, and what you just said there about not creating a job for yourself. I think that it sounds great, right?
Yeah.
It
sounds awesome.
It's like, okay, great. I became an entrepreneur because I don't want a job, but now I have a job. What have you learned in the past 7 years of opening up your agency? What are maybe some strategies that you've learned to pull yourself out? I know that you mentioned you're not 100% out of the business, nor do I expect you to be. But what are some strategies or tips or techniques that you've learned to be able to start working on the business versus in it?
The biggest thing is outsource all activities that don't generate revenue. And that's easy to say, hard to do. And what I mean by that is, outsource, have a CPA, have a payroll company. We all have payroll, right? At some point, we're all going to have payroll. Don't do it yourself. Don't use, nothing against QuickBooks. They have a module, I guess, apparently that does that. I don't know about you, but I guarantee you I don't keep up to date with all the tax laws and everything that's changing in the employment world, or Department of Labor rulings, or all. I don't. So I'll speak for myself here. I guarantee you, if I tried to do my payroll, I would mess it up. No matter how much time I spent on it, I would mess it up. But why am I going to spend 8 hours? I'm making up a number here. 8 hours to do payroll, to figure out the taxes and all that, when I can just go on a website. My accountant white labels a payroll company, and I just put in the hours, the commissions. It tells me the amount of money I need to move from my operating account to my payroll account. I do that on another tab, and I'm done in 3 minutes.
Right.
My accountant does all the taxes. He pays all the taxes. If he messes up, he pays the penalties. He's fiduciary.
He has insurance for that.
He has insurance for that. My accountant, I actually insure my accountant. It's payroll. It's bookkeeping. I have a bookkeeper. So she every month will download all my transactions, put them into QuickBooks, and I can look at, some KPIs is the big buzzword right now. So I can look at 15 different metrics and go, okay, look, I'm profitable. Okay, there's a problem. There's another problem. There's a transaction. I don't know what it is. If I tried to do that, and I did it 4 years ago, until 4 years ago, I was manually put in, and a lot of it gets downloaded, which is great, and I have to go in and classify everyone. Why am I doing that? I'm running an insurance agency. I'm not running a bookkeeping firm. Same thing with having an attorney. You want to have an attorney. What I do when I talk to business owners is I kind of walk them through all the different things they're going to need. And I say, you need to get an accountant. Because they'll come to me and ask questions like, well, what should I be? An S Corp or an LLC? I have no idea.
Right.
I said, I'll tell you what I am. I said, I can tell you what I am and why I am that.
Right.
But your financial situation is different than mine. Go to an accountant. Have them do it correctly. Spend the money. Don't go on Google and try to, you can do your own LLC.
Right.
It's not hard. But you're saving, what's the expression? You're saving pennies and walking over dollars. Because as a business owner, and this gets back to your question of in the business, on the business, what is my time worth?
That's it.
I don't know.
That's the question.
Am I worth $100 an hour? Let's just say I'm worth $50 an hour. That's what I'm worth. And I'm spending time doing, $12 an hour work. Why? And I think the other thing that, and this is my own personal pet peeve, is people talk about how many hours they work in a week. That doesn't impress me. Because you probably could work less hours. I like spending time with my family. When I was working on Wall Street in the military, I wasn't around a lot, so maybe I'm a little bit of a hypocrite, but I want to be around friends and family. If I'm working 80 hours a week, think about that. That's 16 hours for 5 days. That's a lot of time. I've worked 16-hour days. I'm not proud of it. That just means I screwed something up, right? That means I made a mistake I had to fix, or I got caught because I wasn't outsourcing. All the stuff I'm talking about now. If I'm working those hours, yes, in the beginning, you do have to work tremendous hours. As an entrepreneur, there's no really such thing as a weekend, but you need that downtime. And with our phones now and the way we're connected to people, I'm trying very hard now to disconnect. It's hard. Everything on my business is on my phone. 24/7, I could look at my phone and probably do something. I can't do that all the time.
What you're saying too, I think we can even go to the 30,000-foot view of the Elon Musks and the Bill Gates of the world, where Elon Musk is notoriously known as working, like you said, those tremendous amount of hours, and Bill Gates the same, of being the last one in the office. And in fact, I just watched a great documentary on him, and we'll leave all the other things out of all this conversation, other than just the business portion of this. That he actually remembered everybody's license plate in the parking lot and knew who was working late with him. But they do both talk about downtime, and they both take downtime. Now, Elon Musk spends that downtime playing video games with his kids and does other things. And so maybe he does have, like what you said, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, on a 16-hour workday where, like you said, you're fixing some things that you might have broke, but you are making up that time somewhere else where you're like, okay, I did 16 hours yesterday. I got to get back to the family. I got to get back to Little League or whatever it is, and get back to my real world to get the balance back. And sure, you're going to have those long days. And Bill Gates talks about his week-long retreats where he turns everything off and doesn't bring anything with him other than his books and a notepad, and just goes to his retreat, his island, and just sits there. Now, we don't all have islands, but the point is, the point is that even from that 30,000-foot view of these multi-billionaires, they also take that time. So we, as entrepreneurs and business leaders and people in the normal world, right, down here, can make time to be able to not work so hard and work more effectively. And
that's the buzzword. It's hard to do, but I think, if you are working those hours consistently, eventually you're going to burn out.
Right.
My philosophy in my agency, and I've stuck to this since day one, is I am never going to have a team member have to make a decision between work and their family.
Right.
I will lose that 100% of the time. I better lose that 100% of the time. And I don't want someone to ever be in that position. And, maybe insurance is a little unique, but I don't really think it is that, I want my team to go to the ballet recitals, the softball games, all this. If you need to take the afternoon off, take it. If you need a mental health day, take it.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we can all be busy, right? I could literally, if I wanted to, could be on my laptop 16 hours a day and probably be doing something. But am I really being productive, or am I just being busy? And I think there's this badge of honor for entrepreneurs of, I work 16-hour day. My first response is, you're an idiot. And yes, in the beginning, yes, you do have to do things. And are there points during your business as it grows, you've got to work those hours? Yes, because you can't You're not able to hire people yet.
Right.
But you got to have a plan to get out of it. Because otherwise you end up with a
think
16-hour day job that you don't like.
And that's very important what you just said there. You got to have a plan to get out of it, because like you just said, there are some tasks and some things that, you realize as the entrepreneur or business leader that this is a $12 an hour task, but right now I have to do it. But as long as you have that plan, like you just said, of who am I going to hire that's going to do this for me, right?
Yep. And what do I need for revenue to get there? Or do I need to, get a loan, or do, whatever your plan is. I think it's really important that you have, your goal at the end of the day. The way I kind of view business is, if you can build a business, you're now running day to day, and you're not running the day to day. You're delegating. Mm-hmm. Delegate's another word that we haven't really talked about, and that's hard to do too. That's where the mistakes come in. But you've got to be able to do that so the business can run without you.
Right.
And it's not always going to be perfect. But you need to be able, what if I just disappeared for 3 days? Does my team know exactly what to do every day? Probably not, but that's on me. That's not on them. That means I haven't trained them correctly.
You bring up a good point of delegation, and you're 100% right. And that's why at much larger corporations, there's a chief operating officer. Yeah, they're there for operations for a reason, and you need that. And I hope for our entrepreneurs and business leaders that are listening is that they're able to grow to that point and put that plan in place. Another very important part that you just mentioned there is delegation, is learning how to delegate. And I think that goes back to our conversation earlier on about making a decision. I think delegation and decision making pretty much go hand in hand, because you're making a decision to trust that employee and you're allowing them to make a decision as well. So you're delegating a task to them. Speak to us a little bit about that, about delegation and your philosophy on it.
My philosophy on delegation is you have to delegate with authority and accountability. There's a difference between just, okay, Michael, I need you to do this task, but I'm going to micromanage it. Mm-hmm. That defeats the whole point of delegation. Mm. Do I do that? Yes. So I'm guilty of a lot of stuff I'm saying. Just throw it out there. Sure. I am not perfect. But when you can delegate, you're literally saying, okay, I now blindly trust you to do that job, and I'm not going to micromanage you. Mm. I might have spot checks. I think it's important to have spot checks early on to make sure they're doing the right thing. And if they're not doing the right thing, that's on you as a leader. It's not their fault that they made a mistake. As a true leader, and there's another great book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. He's a Navy SEAL. Everyone should read this, because he's now taken and I was not a Navy SEAL, but I'm going to try to paraphrase this a little bit, taken his training from being a Navy SEAL, which is some of the toughest training in the world, and brought it into the corporate world. And what he talks about is you own everything. You're the leader, whether you're the squad leader, whether you're the business owner, you own everything. Mm-hmm. Every decision, every mistake, everything happens is on you 100%. You cannot delegate that authority. Mm-hmm. It's still on you. You're delegating the task, right? You're not saying, okay, Michael, if you screw up, you're fired.
Right.
You're saying, hey, I need you to get this done. If you make a mistake, I'm good. We'll back you up and we'll get it done. But I don't have the time to do it. So I'm going to send it down to you, and you're going to. And I want you to be entrepreneurial also, because maybe there's a better way to do it. Mm-hmm. The expression you always hear is, well, it's the way we've always done it. Well, there's a lot of industries that fail because of that. Mm-hmm. I want people, and if I say, hey, I need you to get this done. Well, hey, Rob, there's a better way to do it. Why are we doing it that way? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. So if there's a better way, and that's where that delegation works really well, because now you delegate a task, and that person takes it to the next level. And they're thinking, oh, well, wait a minute. If I'm going to keep doing this, maybe there's a better way to do it, and come back with ideas, as opposed to just doing it and being an employee and just doing the task and getting it off their plate and moving to the next one. If you can create that entrepreneurial spirit among your team, now you're going to naturally become more efficient. But you have to give them the ability to make those mistakes.
Right.
It's the only way we learn, right? You don't learn by staying in, you mentioned safe zone before, or comfort zone. Yep. You typically don't learn in that comfort zone. You learn by putting yourself out there, and you want your team to put themselves out there. Hey, let's try this. Oops, it didn't work. We messed up. No harm, no foul. My view of the world is, okay, we made a mistake. We figured out why we did it. We know we're not going to do it again because we did X. Let's move on. Yeah. Too many times people belabor that point, and they just stick to it and stick to it and stick to it, and you're just beating a dead horse.
And then they get stuck there. Yeah.
It's just move on. And then it can become personal too, right? Now it's, I've given Michael 2 tasks, he screwed up both of them, and now I'm just going to keep beating on him. And that's not fair either. That no one wins in that scenario.
Right.
But entrepreneurs need to understand. I joke about this sometimes. People, my team will come in and say, "Hey, Rob, we need to do this. We need to make a decision." And I'll look over my shoulder, and there's no one behind me.
That's right.
Because a lot of us were, because we were children, our parents made a lot of decisions for us, guided us. You go to corporate America, you still have this huge infrastructure over top of you, and now you're on your own. And you have to make those decisions, and you need the right people around you. You need the right expertise. You're learning. One of the things we didn't talk about, I think entrepreneurs need to always be reading, always be learning, because none of us are perfect. It's a good day if I learn stuff every single day. And I think that's important. I think a lot of people get stagnant. Like, I got this. We're never going to get this thing.
Right.
I mean, life itself is, you're never going to figure out.
Yeah.
But the business evolves. COVID came. Who had a pandemic plan? Nobody. And if there is someone out there that did have one, I'd like to meet them and have them on the show. And I'd like to see how it worked. How did that disaster recovery plan work for you? But no one had that plan.
Right.
And, that was, global. It was unbelievable what happened. But there's a lot of learning points off of that. What if you have a fire in your place of employment and you got to lay your people off? What's your plan?
A lot of growth too, like you said, like in that learning, in those mistakes, you grow a lot. And we learned in COVID that a lot of these businesses, they were able to adapt and grow and make changes that they never thought they could do, or take risks that they never thought they could take. And some of them, I know, like my dentist office, when I asked them, I said, how'd you guys take the shutdown? He said, actually, we used it as an opportunity to be able to expand our business and grow internally, and be able to do some of the things internally that we didn't have time to do. So they were smart about it. Some of these business owners were very smart about taking that time during quarantine, that is, to be able to adapt and change their business going forward. And it's like the old phrase of if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Yep.
And I think for these businesses that survive through this, they certainly are stronger and learn how to really.
Some businesses came out 1,000 times better because you're right. They took the time. It was kind of a downtime, we'll call it, but they looked at their business differently. I mean, we did that in my office. We're like, okay, we apparently need to be a little more be able to handle remote working. I mean, we had things set up.
Yep.
We were lucky, so we were able to fight our way through the first month or so, but we had to tweak it. We didn't have it perfect.
Yeah.
And we were able to tweak it over the last year of now, I mean, I can work anywhere in the world.
Right. And it makes your business so much stronger, like you said, with where it that's another way of removing yourself from the business, is that you're able to step out, work remotely, and trust. I think in everything that you said here, and it's no surprise, I don't think this will surprise anybody, but the foundation to most of the leadership qualities that you spoke about is trust, is building and establishing trust with your employees, with your team members, with when you were in the Navy, with everybody there, is that once you have that trust, then you can lead, then you can ask them to do things that are uncomfortable, then you can ask them to be honest with you about mistakes that they made, and then you can delegate to them because now you trust them and they trust you, and you could give them a task that maybe they thought they couldn't do. Yep. But because they trust your leadership and guidance, they know you're there for them.
And I think the other important thing with trust is you have, as a leader, you need to be willing to do that task before you delegate. I'm not great at that, honestly. I will tend to say, okay, you go figure it out. But I have to be able to do it myself. Because if I've done it myself, now there's that trust coming back from the team member. Like, hey, well, he did it, and now I'm doing it. Because I think a lot of people think that if you're delegating as a leader, you think it's a menial task that's too beneath you, which is ridiculous. And especially as an entrepreneur, because you've done everything.
Right.
Day one, you open your business, whatever you're opening.
Yeah.
You don't know anything. You have no one else to help you. You're winging it a lot of the times. So you've done all those tasks. And now what you're doing as you grow, you're pulling yourself up and you're just hiring people or hiring services or outsourcing, whatever you're doing. And that's what's going to get you to grow. And I think, for entrepreneurs, this is a great time to be an entrepreneur. Technology has changed the game. My kids were telling me there's kids making $15,000 a year doing Instagram posts. You know,
they're making a lot more than that, by the way.
Some of them making a lot more than that. But they're influencers. Think about that business model. You know, that's brilliant. You know, so there's more opportunities out there, and I think people see that and go, oh, I'm going to make, and that's not the way it works.
And they're working very hard as well.
Yeah, and they're working and that people don't see that. Yeah. I think a lot of people see these people that, you know, that have a great business idea or an Instagram influencer, if that's even the right term, that they don't understand the work that went into that. They just think, oh, well, I open up an Instagram account, I start posting some cool stuff, and people are going to find.
It goes back to the conversation that I feel like we've all sat around a table and heard of, like, well, why didn't I create that? Or I created that in my kitchen, you know, and why didn't we sell it? We could have sold millions of those. And the truth is, yeah, you probably could have, but the work that went into selling that little gadget or that little whatever it is that we're talking about, or that Instagram account that you're talking about creating there's a lot of work that goes in behind it. And being an entrepreneur or a business leader, there's a lot of work that goes in behind it. Something else I want to touch on, and I'd love to get into some of your philanthropy. Fun word to say.
Yeah, tough word.
Is something that you mentioned, is that a lot of the lessons that you're sharing with us about entrepreneurs can be related into the business world and the corporate world. And I did have somebody on from the corporate world here, and what we talked about is intrapreneurship. And it's being an intrapreneur. So you're acting as an entrepreneur while you're working in the corporation. And there's a lot of businesses out there that actually want this. They want that kind of employee that comes in and does want the benefits of a 2-week vacation and the benefits of healthcare and a salary, but also kind of wants to develop and be able to be creative. And they want that kind of employee. So there are opportunities in the business world to be like that. But I think the first step, and from what Rajiv had shared with us in his podcast with me, was that, and he didn't say it like this, but I mean, it's what we've been talking about this entire podcast, is the first thing is you got to build trust with that employer. Is that, you know, in the entrepreneurial world, what's great, and also it's a double-edged sword, right? What's great is that you're taking the risk on your own, right? So you can just go out and be the entrepreneur and go for it. And if you fail, you fail, right? But in the business world, because they're paying you and giving you all these different benefits, you do have to build trust with them first. And you have to show them that you're really good at what you do. And then from there, you can start bringing up some thoughts. And this is definitely a tip that I've learned from these people, these business leaders, is that you could start bringing up thoughts and your ideas and start sharing them with leadership and start asking them for a little bit of trust and seeing if they trust you to be able to be an quote unquote entrepreneur, which is a nice word that we use nowadays.
If you're a large corporation, I think you need to foster that.
Yes.
But that's 20 years ago. That wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Guarantee you. And you know, I was listening to a podcast and they talked about Google does that, where they allow their employees like 4 hours a week, or I don't know if that's the right number, but they have a certain number of hours a week to just think outside the box.
It's actually 20 hours.
Is it 20 hours?
Yes,
okay.
It's Google and a lot of those.
But it's brilliant. That's where I guess apparently Gmail came from. That's where, you know, the innovation, because you're right, a guy or girl feels comfortable, okay, I've got the stable job, but this company's allowing me to think outside the box and kind of, you know, people think of that as playing a little bit, but they're trying to, at the end, the corporation's going to win.
Yes.
You know, so why not let people think outside the box? Let them experiment.
Yeah, at TED, I read the book about TED, and he talks about that as well. And what they do is they allow them 20 hours, and what they do it a little bit. It is, some of it is structured creativity, and they have to come back with different research projects and speeches because they feel as though they're putting on these conferences, then they should also be pretty savvy with it as well. So they do it internally, and they've developed different things from that, which is, I mean, you do develop a lot by allowing that trust with your employees and allowing them to be creative. I think it's a great thing. I would like to go into a little bit about you being a veteran. And, you know, my father's a veteran. He's a Vietnam vet. And I would be remiss if I didn't give him a shout out, Leonard Esposito, airborne. He was a medic and served for our country. So I have a special affinity towards veterans. And you do something that is amazing, and I would love to hear a little bit more about it, is equine therapy. And you sit as the board president of the Equine Therapy Center, and you help veterans dress for interviews. And I thought that was very interesting because it's something that is overlooked. We think, let's just go help somebody, but we don't realize that maybe they need a little help in putting a tie on to go to an interview, or putting a skirt on to go to an interview. I think your wife might be able to help on that end. But
yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about the equine therapy and what you do there, and And we know how you got involved because you are a veteran, but not everybody gets involved in these kinds of things. So what led you to get involved and serve your time?
I'll tell you, if you don't mind, I'm just going to take a quick step back. I believe also as a business owner, entrepreneur, we have a very unique platform where we can leverage our business, leverage our branding, leverage our social media to help other people. Because, I have a physical office. I have a business Facebook page. I have followers, right? And now I can leverage that to help someone else. So I, being a veteran, chose to help other veterans. So the equine therapy actually started, Lori Bryceland is our executive director. We started it right smack in the middle of COVID. So June of last year, we opened up. She has a farm. She has all the certifications. She is PATH certified. I'm still learning. I'm not a horse person. I'm learning. And she had asked me, she goes, listen, I want to open this up. Can you come in and help me on the business side? I said, I'd love to. That would be awesome. I can talk, I can make sure we're insured correctly. I can make sure we have books and records. We use QuickBooks, all the things that an entrepreneur needs to do. And she's the brains of the operation. So she does all the therapy. So what I have found, and if you don't mind, I'll just tell a quick story, but I met a young Marine at an equine therapy event 2 years ago. And these are his words. He goes, I was a drunken a-hole. I was fighting cops. That's PTSD. Served 2 tours in Fallujah. That's
right.
And if anyone has followed the Afghan war, that was a god-awful place to be. He served 2 full tours there. And it affected him. He has PTSD. And equine therapy, now there was other people involved. He had, it's social work, he had therapists, he had a lot of it. But the equine therapy piece in his mind made him a responsible human being. He now has access to his kids. He's now in charge of the barn. And I joke, if you ever want a clean barn, hire a Marine. I was Marine Corps trained. I can clean anything with a toothbrush. Give me a toothbrush, that place will be spotless. And that barn, you could eat off that floor. And so I saw that. And then when Lori asked me to come on, be part of the board, I was like, yes. Equine therapy has a very high success rate. The horses understand emotions. Now I'm kind of, we talk about making sure we stay in our lanes and understand what I am not trained in this. I have no idea. I mean, this is just my personal gut feeling. And I've seen it work. It also works with children with autism. Anyone with any kind of anxiety, depression. That's really what PTSD is, kind of accumulation of an event happened and there's that tape, it keeps playing fast forward in your head and you can't stop it. You can't slow it down. Equine therapy allows that to slow down. And there's a lot of great therapies for veterans with PTSD. And civilians get PTSD too. A lot of people out of 9/11 had PTSD. We didn't call it that. We called it anxiety. It's all the same stuff. And again, I'm not a therapist. This is my personal view. But having that ability to, bring a veteran in a non-threatening, I view it as a non-medical environment, and they don't even know what's happening to them. They're, okay, we're going to put you on a horse. You're going to walk the horse. You're going to clean the horse. You're going to, whatever Lori has them set up. Now, there's a social worker there making sure that we're having that. There's probably a psychologist talking with this veteran. So there's other supporting people around it, but this is just one piece of the pie that basically can help them slow down that tape that's causing the problem. So if someone backfires a car or fireworks or whatever may cause it, and sometimes it's continuous, if we can help one veteran, it's worth it in my book. Right now, I think the number's higher, but right now what's out there in the public is 22 veterans a day commit suicide. That's a number. That's unacceptable in my book. Veterans make up about 1% to 2% of our population. And not that they want to be treated differently, not that I want to be treated differently, but we need to be able to help them. And that's kind of what drives me. So I'm able to leverage my platform. I hate calling it a platform, but it's a platform of an insurance agency. And I have realtors that will, donate money for me. I do presentations to realtors and to mortgage lenders about insurance. It's not that exciting, right? It really is not. And you know where I'm talking about. But I always end it with, hey, I also collect suits for soldiers. I also do equine therapy. I also do a project called Boxers for Soldiers that we just finished in Memorial Day. And I can ask. It's a direct ask. I'm not selling. I'm just like, they've gotten to know me. They trust me. They know where I'm coming from. They know my intentions are good. And I just ask, hey, we need to raise $2,000. And I'll have a real estate, broker that will raise money for me, or they'll collect suits for me. I talk to Rotaries. I talk to, Kiwanis clubs. And all I've really done is I've leveraged my networking ability to network into the veteran community. So I'm part of a task force in the Hudson Valley. So if something comes up and there's a veteran that needs help, we try to figure out how to help him. His name is Larry Newman. He is an amazing, amazing person. And he connects all this stuff. But there's so many different ways we can help. And unfortunately, with a veteran, most veterans, and I'm guilty here too, how you doing? I'm fine. I'm fine. I was brought up in old school military. They're getting better in today's military, but I'm fine. I'm good. They called it shell-shocked, right? In World War Vietnam.
Right.
Shell-shocked. No, there's a medical condition here. And we have to stop with this whole thing now. Vietnam was all men. And most of those guys are in their 70s or 80s. That's where your dad is. And a lot of those guys have problems. They have medical issues. They have PTSD, but we didn't diagnose it. We just said, suck it up, you're fine. And that's the way it's not the way the military meant to train us, but that's the outcome of it. I'm good. I'm trained. I can handle this. I'm certainly not going to show vulnerability here.
Right.
I got this. And there's times where you got to raise your hand. And what equine therapy does is allows them to be in a non-threatening environment. And, veterans are like, I'm concerned that this therapy session is going to end up on my permanent military record because they're using VA medical. So they come in and we don't tell the VA. But the VA, we're trying to get the VA involved in this too. That's a whole bigger animal. Because unfortunately, what the solution has been to drug these kids and make them zombies.
You said kids, and I don't think we realize how old the age group that you're speaking about here.
They're kids. I have kids the same age. They're my kids' age. These are mid-20s. We can all say at 18 you're an adult. And I'm 57. They're kids.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I think that
I don't mean that as an insult.
I don't think you do.
But it's more of, hey, they have parents, right? They have parents that, but they're kids.
Yeah, I think it's important that you bring up that age group though, because, like you just said, we all see the Vietnam veteran who's a 70. What I mean to say is we all see the 70-year-old or the 80-year-old wearing their Vietnam veteran hat, right? But we don't see the 20-year-old wearing their veteran hat. They'll wear the camos and everything, and we see some of that, but we don't see them wearing the veteran hat, and we don't realize it as a society that sometimes we have these. Not sometimes, we definitely do, as you said, about close to 2% of our population is veterans. We have these veterans walking around and they're dealing with crap. And so they're going through some stuff. So it's very important that we bring up that age group so that people can realize that 20 and 30-year-olds that are walking around the supermarket, that, a can falls on the floor and they're freaking out. That's why.
Yeah. And they're trying to do the best and they don't even realize they have a problem. Right? Because again, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm fine. I mean, I've been fortunate because I have people come in my office. I'll be on the phone. I hear something. They make an expression. And I'm like, okay, that's a veteran. And I'll always ask. And I'll tell them, I will preach, hey, listen, I work for equine therapy. I'm giving them the ability to raise their hand. Because I don't know their backstory. But I also know that veterans will talk to veterans. And that's not an arrogant thing. And I always like to make that clear to people. It's not that veterans aren't going to talk to a civilian. But a veteran's going to talk to a veteran because we've been in this similar situation. Again, was I ever in with bullets flying? Never. I was in combat zones. We crossed a lat long in the Persian Gulf is what we did. But I can relate to that person a little bit better. And I've had veterans in my office open up. Yeah, something I said, something they said, oh, you're a veteran, where'd you serve, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll say something like, yeah, I lost my buddy in Fallujah. Or I lost my co-pilot with an RPG that came up through the bottom of the helicopter. And they open, and I'm like, cool, this is my chance. And I'll say, hey, how you doing? Everything okay?
Did you ever ride a horse?
yeah. Here's a way we can do it, and maybe they're okay with it. Maybe they're not. And you can kind of see through some of the BS, because again, we'll put up the front. I'm good. Yeah. But, my view of the world is so many people, there's a lot of people in the world that want to help. They just don't know how.
Right.
And what I'm trying to do is provide them with opportunities. So if you want to help with equine therapy, we need volunteers. We need this, we need that. You want to help with suits for soldiers? Great. You can do a suit drive for me. I had Kiwanis reach out. This is their year of the veteran. So they reached out and said, hey, we want to help. We want to do boxes for soldiers. Great. Kendall Class does that. She's the brains of the operation.
Right.
And we had them for 8 hours. They packed boxes. We sent almost 400 boxes overseas.
Right.
Because people want to help. And I've been able to use my platform, my insurance agency, and, very clear in my social media where I stand. I've been very patriotic. I love the American flag.
What's the name of your insurance agency?
Yeah, Patriotic Insurance Group. But when I do that, what it is that I'm proud of this country. I'm proud that I served, but I'm also exposing the other side of it, which is, hey, there's people that need help.
Yep.
And some people come out of the military without any mental or physical disabilities, but they still need help.
Right.
It was a tough transition for me. I was lucky. I knew a couple of people in the business world. I knew that I needed to buy suits. I knew that, but a lot of people have no idea. Because for 8 years I was told what to wear every day. Plan of the day. Here's the uniform of the day. There's no decision.
Right.
And I wore mainly flight suits, so it was like I joke we walked around in pajamas, but I didn't have to make choices. And now all of a sudden you come out, and what we have is you have military uniforms and you have play clothes. Right? You don't have button downs. You don't have khakis. Why would you need them? You don't need them.
Right.
And depending on where you're stationed, you might not even need long pants. You might just need shorts.
Right.
And you just don't have that that middle wardrobe, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And so we can help there. And that's where the Suits for Soldiers comes in. It's just giving these guys and girls their first interview. And what it opens up for me was, I've had people. I just had a store down at Woodbury Commons was closing, and I ended up with 85 pairs of women's shoes.
Wow.
Apparently they're nice shoes. I had to call my wife on that. Hey, this store just called me, and she's like, oh, those are nice shoes. I was taking them anyways. So I ended up with 85 pairs of women's shoes that I sent to an organization that does job fairs. And there's ulterior motives to what we're doing with the suits of trying to get them jobs and, offer LinkedIn services, resume writing, all this other stuff. But the suits become a symbol of, I had a Rotary call and I ended up with 10 boxes of button downs because Joseph A. Banks had donated it to Rotary. The problem is they were bringing it over to Korea, and Korean men tend to be smaller than American men. So they had smalls, mediums, larges, and the larges and extra larges weren't going to fit the average Asian man.
Right. They're using that as a tablecloth.
So they're like, we have all these shirts. Can you use them? I'll take them. So I end up with these 10 huge boxes from Joseph A. Banks still in the wrappers.
That's wonderful.
So again, using the platform, people know what I do. Yeah. We get calls once or twice a week. My team knows how to handle them. Every quarter we have a cargo van show up and offload my back office because there's just, it becomes a fire hazard. We joke about it all the time. It's just stacks of suits.
It's great work that you're doing, and I think it's so important in everything that we just spoke about. A couple little notes is I love horses personally. Mm-hmm. I don't have any horses, but I've been riding them since I was a little kid, and something that you do know with a horse, and I think like almost any animal, like a dog and things like that, but especially with the horses, as far as my experience goes, is that you have a relationship with that animal when you're sitting on top of them. Yeah. And we've been talking about trust, so I'm not going to stop here, is that you have to trust each other and you have to be vulnerable. And when we talk about these veterans, kind of like, as you said, kind of have this, I'm good. They can't just be good with the horse. They have to be a little vulnerable in order for that horse to then trust them and allow them on their back and to ride them comfortably.
Or even just allow them to clean them.
Yeah.
When Lori did a training session, and, I'd ridden horses, I'd been around, but not continuously. So I probably hadn't ridden a horse in 20 years. And she was showing me how to clean the horse. And it was amazing to me. As I'm rubbing, I'm looking, and he's looking at me.
He's looking, yeah.
And his eyes, I could see his emotions in his eyes. And I was like, oh my God, this is, and I can see that connection. And I'm doing it. And if I did it wrong, he would pick his leg up a little bit. He wasn't going to kick me, but he was just like, no, you're doing this wrong.
Right. You better fix it.
And Lori's right there, and she was watching all of us do it. And she's like, no, Rob, do it this way. This horse likes it this way. This is general. And I would do it right. And I could tell by the look in his eye that he appreciated what I was doing. He knew I was safe around him. I wasn't going to hurt him. But yeah, those eyes just go right through you.
Yeah.
And for such a massive animal, that at any point could kick me and send me, 20 feet away, and they don't, as long as you treat them correctly.
Right.
But you're right. And it's funny. Lori was telling a story of a Marine that showed up. So typical 6'4", 260, big. He was like, I'm not getting on that horse. He was terrified.
Right.
And here's this big guy who fought in combat, and
Yep.
when he got on, eventually he got on it. That was his bond, his form of trust, to trust the horse, because he didn't trust the horse.
Right.
They built that trust up and got on the horse, and it's helped him.
They do it together. Yeah, it's wonderful. Is there a Facebook page or a website that we can steer anybody to for this? Because I think it's just such great work.
VictoryHillTH.org.
VictoryHillTH.org. Great. So visit that, please, to any of our veterans out there who are listening. VictoryHillTH.org. Just really great therapy. As I know from personal experience with my father, coming back with PTSD, and it took him many years to finally be able to get some help. And it changed his life, I think. I think he was able to enjoy life a lot more. Is able to enjoy life a lot more. He's still with us. But he still, I will say this, he still drops to the floor if something loud happens. So it's something that maybe you never shake, but at least you can start working towards enjoying life a little bit better. Another thing that I just want to mention as we wrap up the show with this, and you mentioned this too while we were talking about your platform. It's so important. This is a question that I ask to all of my entrepreneurs and business leaders that come on the show, is their philanthropy. And it's because I do feel that it's very important to give back. And you mentioned it earlier at the top of the show when we were talking about being in boot camp and what gets you through the hard times, and it's for the greater good. Mm-hmm. And what's the greater good? And when we think about the military and combat, well, the greater good is to stay alive, right? Yep, exactly. And also what you're fighting for, of course. Yep. But in the business world, what is the greater good, right? The greater good is not to make boatloads of money and millions of dollars, although that could be a great incentive and a great goal to achieve and all that. But the greater good is to give back, is to help others, is to be a good human, as you had mentioned. Yep. And so I think it's so important, the work that you're doing, and I really, really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. And I think the other thing, too, is we as business owners and entrepreneurs have the ability to give people opportunities they wouldn't normally get. Mm. I had, if you don't mind, I just have a quick story. I had a National Honors student at Chester Academy, and he wanted to do an internship. And I'm like, I'm an insurance agent. I mean, come on, I'm not going to make this kid make copies and teach him insurance. But she's like, no, he has a good idea. This kid walked in, 17-year-old kid, walked in and said, I want to make boxes for homeless veterans. Mm. Really? So I said, Tell me the backstory. Tell me why. What's the military side of it? And he can trace his family back. He's got Army and Air Force. And so being part of the task force, that's what the task force does. It deals with homeless veterans. So I had as I call it, distribution source for these boxes. And I said, okay, you're coming to the task force meeting. So I gave this kid, I did not give, I gave him the opportunity to get in front of 50 people. Most of them were, I call them the grumbly Vietnam vets, tough audience. And he got up and presented for 10 minutes in front of his guidance counselor, his principal, and the superintendent, who I all know. Mm. They all came to his presentation. And this kid nailed it. Mm. Afterwards, the guy said, follow me. I was like, where am I going? He goes, follow me to Lowe's. Guy bought $100 worth of boxes for him. Another person bought this. And he was looking at me like, I'm like, this is how this works. You have a great story. But I think that's our obligation as a business owner, is to give, whether it's a high school kid, whether it's someone, but give them, you have the ability to do that. Mm-hmm. You have the ability to connect. We all network. That's what we do, right? Mm-hmm. And COVID and Zoom taught us we can network further out.
Right.
But we all have networks we could leverage to help someone else, to help the community. I work with the schools. I work with, I'll say yes to most people because I think I can give them that opportunity. Or even I just make an introduction, do nothing, right? Hey, listen, Mike, you want to meet someone? Okay, let me introduce you over here. Yep. Because we do that for business. And in the personal side and philanthropy side, it's a lot more fun because you're not selling anything. You're just trying to help. And you can build these platforms and you can make a difference. I've seen it work. Mm-hmm. And I think the entrepreneur that doesn't get that, the business owner that doesn't get that, and I'm not talking about the Little League and the Boy Scouts and all those guys that come in and ask for $250 and you write a check and you give it to them. That's great. Mm-hmm. But do something. Mm-hmm. Spend time. Spend an hour of your week helping someone. Volunteer. I'm not saying don't write the check. That's awesome if that's what you want to do. But you can make a bigger difference by volunteering your time, by connecting people, by really focusing on it at points and saying, okay, I've got to get this done. How am I going to do this? Okay, I'm going to connect these two people. Or I can help this high school student, or I can help, this person. And when you see that work, it's amazing. I mean, you can connect businesses. I have a managed service provider, an IT provider, and I'm the drop-off point now, where we get old computers. They delete everything, make them, put viruses on, and we donate it to veterans that don't have laptops. But that took, again, I'm just a drop-off point, but they're willing to do the work. Mm-hmm. So guess what? I go out on my social, hey, anyone have an old computer? Oh yeah, I got an old computer. I'm trying to get rid of it. I can't get rid of it. Bring it to my office. And I just, so find something. I always tell everyone, because people ask about some of the veteran stuff I do. I'm like, it doesn't have to be veterans. Find something you're passionate about, that you feel in your heart, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a personal experience. Maybe it's your parents. Maybe it's your kid. It doesn't matter. Find something you can make your little bit makes a big difference. Because if we all do a little bit, we can have a huge impact. We don't have to become, the head of this huge not-for-profit, but we could volunteer our time. We could connect someone. You can, and I've seen it in the Chester community just by naturally networking with people, and they know what I do. And, so when I need some help, I go and ask, hey, we're sending boxes overseas. I need $3,000. Businesses come out of the woodwork. Oh, here you go. Can we help pack? Because it's all about, they talk about in the business world, the reciprocity. Mm-hmm. I don't look at that. I look at it as karma. I'm a big believer in karma. If you do the right thing when no one's looking, it comes back. Yeah. But it's a long game, right? It's a long game. So there's so many opportunities. And the only thing I will say is that if you want to help, whether it's veterans, non-veterans, whatever, reach out to me. I might know someone. We might connect. You never know. You never know who someone else knows.
Oh yeah, and we're certainly all connected, as we've learned in these times.
Yes.
And on another little thing going back into the show here of what we've been talking about the whole time is it just builds tremendous relationships. The more you give, the more relationships you build. And we go back again to where you said, how much is your time worth? And we talked about that and figuring out what your time is worth. Just imagine what that number is. And when you give an hour of that time to a non-for-profit, how much you're giving them. And in fact, I would even double it or triple it when you do give that time to them, of how much that time huge. That you just gave them is worth versus the check. Although do write the check, please.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I thank you for saying that. Yeah.
For our non-for-profits out there, we need the money.
Well, and look what COVID did to them. All their big social events,
yes.
The big dinners and all the things they did, they can do that. They did it virtually. Yeah. They tried. They're looking for bodies.
It's very hard. We have a non-for-profit, my family, Forgotten Children of Haiti, and we had different social events and different bus rides and different things that were big fundraisers for us because we're a very small non-for-profit, and because we didn't have those funds, and it made it very challenging.
What's the not-for-profit?
It's called Forgotten Children of Haiti.
Okay.
Yes, I'm actually half Haitian.
Oh, okay.
We come in different shapes and sizes.
Yep.
Different looks, but yeah. So Forgotten Children of Haiti, my parents had started that back in '94 with other family members and friends, and I'm carrying the torch for them with them still continuously.
That's awesome.
All together. But yeah, we unfortunately couldn't do some of that because of COVID. So do write the check because these non-for-profits, we all need them. But I love the work that you're doing. It certainly relates back to business. I think any entrepreneur who's listening, any business leader who's listening, is that giving back to your community, giving back to the non-for-profits, and giving back to everybody around you. And like you said, I think that was another great point that you brought out is it doesn't have to be veterans. It doesn't have to be something that has to do with your heritage. It just has to do something with that you're passionate about, that you want to give your time to, that you want to give your money to, and go out there and do it, because it's going to come back tenfold. And you're not doing it for this reason, but it will come back to your business. It will come back because you're building solid relationships with your community, with these people, and you're building trust. We've been talking about it the whole time. The title of this podcast is going to be Building Trust.
Building Trust. Well, it is. But it's a different conversation, Michael.
It's
like I said, when I do a presentation, someone wants to learn about being a real estate investor, and I talk about the insurance side of it. That's not that exciting. But when I start talking about suits for soldiers, boxes for soldiers, Victory Hill, they engage at this point. And, I have a captive audience. I have 20 people on the Hollywood Square screen.
That's it.
And they're all listening. And I get those phone calls. Hey, you're that soup guy, right? I'm like, yes. If you do it and you do it with the right intentions, yes, it does come back tenfold, and it's not why we do it. But find something you really want to do. And what I like about it is you see the good in people.
That's right.
I think there's a lot of focus now on negativity and this and all this other stuff. And it's just like, we need to just figure this out. And we all got to start acting like human beings. But you see the good in people. I mean, I've met some amazing people that, widows of Vietnam vets have brought their husband's suits in, and they've had them for 5 years because they couldn't get rid of them. And this is helping them let go.
Yep.
When I started collecting suits, I never thought it would get there.
Yep.
But I was able to help this 80-year-old woman through this.
Right.
That's powerful. We have had cry sessions. Pre-COVID, we had a lot of hugging sessions, and I've gotten to know these people.
And what's nice is their suits have come back into style. So
yeah, well, after 20 years, one woman had it for 20 years.
So they're back in style then. Those suits are back in style.
And there's ways, you will be seeing the good in people, seeing humanity is amazing.
Yeah.
People want to help. So many people, Michael, they want to help. I had no idea you did this. I have churches that have thrift shops. They have suits. Well, those aren't their clients. They're taking care of the homeless.
Mm-hmm. They bring them in.
30 suits show up, and I'm like, okay, well, you're taking care of the homeless. I'm also working with homeless veterans. How can we help you?
Right.
Where are you short? Okay, well, we have a homeless veteran. We have I don't know 100 pairs of underwear. I'm making this up. You need that? Let's move that.
Move it. Yeah.
Make that connection for them. Hey, listen, if you get caught, we've got this huge. It works.
And the other things that are in there too that we're talking about here that you see is that your employees then see your generosity as well as a business, as a business leader. And it makes it an environment where they become generous too with their time with you, and they want to work with you better. It just all comes back. And then what you just mentioned there too, I think is another great leadership quality of the connection and seeing what one needs and what one has too much of and what one needs and distribution. And you just learn so much when you give back. You just learn so much by being a part of these different non-for-profit organizations. And, so it all comes back to the business like tenfold. So it's really, really, you got to do it. You got to be a part of one of those. Well,
you have to. And again, pick
that's the message here.
Pick what you want to do.
Yeah.
If it starts with sponsoring a little league team and you get your name on the back, expect nothing in return. First of all, when you do that, pay the $500. But someone else said this. This is not my original thought. Another agent who was on a podcast talked about this. He's like, "Yeah, I put my name on the back, but I coached.
Right.
I had barbecues with the kids." And he said, at the end of the day, I ended up with X amount of dollars of new business, but that was not my plan.
Right.
He goes, I didn't just give the $500. I volunteered my time. Now they had a need for one less coach. His son was on the team, but he didn't have to volunteer. He's too busy. He's working those 16-hour days.
Right.
Guess what? He gets to get out of the office at 4:00 and go hang out with his son for an hour and a half.
That's it.
That's a win.
Yep.
That's a huge win. That's a lot more important than sitting in your office figuring out an insurance policy.
No, you learn so much. Bill Campbell, who is known as like Silicon Valley's coach, he's since passed, but this guy was working with the heads of Google and all the different with Steve Jobs and everything. He was one of their coaches. That's why he's known as that. And he still all throughout all of his experience in Silicon Valley was coaching girls football teams. And he would continue, and he would say, you would meet me on the field, and he wouldn't answer his phone. And in his book, he talked about this. It's called $1 Trillion Coach. He talked about this in the book. Well, he didn't talk about it, but the stories about him talked about this, about that. He would actually show the girls who's calling. And even though everybody knew not to call him during those hours because he'd be coaching the girls, but Steve Jobs, of course, if anybody knows about him, would be calling him. And he would show them, and he would decline the call while he's coaching them. So, I bring these stories up only because I think that if somebody at that level can do it, then we all can.
And why did that happen? Trust.
Right.
He trusted Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs trusted him enough that he could. Oh, it's Steve Jobs. Most of us are answering that phone call.
Oh yeah.
And let's be honest here. He's like, nope.
No doubt.
Because I made it clear to him, This is more.
I've actually made Steve Jobs one of my emergency contacts so he could get through even when my phone's on silence.
There you go. Good.
Although we know that would be pretty strange these days.
That
right?
would be very
he's no
strange.
longer with us.
Yes.
Well, Rob, it has been just an amazing pleasure to have you in. I certainly can see us having another show together because you're a true insurance broker. You can't stop us from talking. We will keep going. We'll go all day long. Something I learned about the business is that in the insurance business, what I love about it is that it really is all about the relationships. It's all about the conversation. And in the end, they'll buy insurance. And I think that relates to every business out there is that, get people to learn your story, get people to learn more about you, learn more about them. And in the end, your business will do well. You'll sell more product, whatever it is. I think that that's what we learned so much from you today. I would like for you to share your website, any way, the point of contacts, and any last final thoughts or messages that you'd like to share with our audience today. Okay.
My website is insuranceleadership.com or patrioticinsurancegroup.com. My office number is 845-610-5700. I say that not to call for an insurance quote, but if anything I said today about volunteering, about the veterans, about anything else of the questions that Michael was asking me, I can direct you. If you want to help, please call that number also. And you can email me at rob@insuranceleadership.com. Tell me what you're looking for, and I'll connect. I'll try to do the best I can to help you out. I think the parting words would be, I think we all need, and you kind of tied this all together for me, Michael, so I appreciate it. We got to stop with the 16-hour days. We got to stop with thinking we're busy, and we have to focus on what's important. And there's that stereotypical, you're not going to be on your deathbed thinking, I wish I spent more time at work. And I think that's true. A little corny, but it's true. But it's all about your legacy. And none of us are perfect. I said numerous times during this thing, I am not perfect. I can talk a great game. Do I do everything I talked about? Probably not. But you got to have a plan. You got to strive for it. And we can be incredible examples for other people as business owners. And you're going to be remembered as the person that, coached the women's football team or that collected suits. It doesn't matter what you do, but I think we all need to have a bigger purpose, and we all have to realize that our businesses can be leveraged for the greater good. And pick a passion. Doesn't matter what it is. There are probably hundreds of people already doing it. That's what Google's for. And connect with that not-for-profit. Do it yourself. It doesn't matter, but spend that hour or two a week, and you'd be shocked. I mean, you just think about it's like the compounding interest, right? It's the same concept. If everyone donated an hour, just think about that. 330 million people in the United States, I think is the number we're working with right now. An hour. Do that math. That's phenomenal.
Right.
And even just 1%, 3 million people each donated an hour. That's huge. So don't try to fix the problem. Just give some time, and then you'll find your passion. I've had people who are literally out there marketing as I'm collecting suits. Like, why don't you market? I'm like, well, I don't really want to market. I have a Facebook page. We put some content on there, but it's not really, I don't want to market it, right? I just want people to know about it. And they're like, oh no, you need to get out there. And I'm like, well, why don't you do it? They're like, okay, I will. And all of a sudden I see these Facebook posts going, hey, if anyone's got suit, because now that's his world, right? That's his or her world. And now they're doing a direct ask. Where if I go into that environment, probably not the right thing to do because I still have the insurance moniker on top of me. So they just say, hey, listen, we're doing a suit. One guy's, his wife did at her gym at CrossFit, collected like 100 suits. There's ways to do this. So if that's where you want to go, but again, I gave my contact information. Call me anytime. I'd be more than happy to connect you. And Michael, this has been an honor.
Awesome.
It's been a pleasure. And I love being able to get the word out about what my office does, what I'm trying to do, and I really appreciate the platform.
Well, thank you very much, Rob. Airborne, right? Yeah. I got to say that for my dad.
Yes, you do.
Well, thanks for being in here. Thank you for listening to The Michael Esposito Show. For show notes, video clips, and more episodes, go to michaelespositoinc.com/podcast.